It's time to cook with Susan Beck. Are you finding it hard to use up all those zucchinis that are growing like crazy as summer comes to an end and fall approaches? Or maybe you're just getting bored with the way you've been cooking your zucchini. Well, today I am going to make for you my favorite chocolate zucchini cake. My chocolate zucchini cake has both cocoa powder, chocolate chips, and a chocolate glaze, so it's kind of a triple chocolate zucchini cake. First though, let's talk about these zucchinis. Zucchinis, in my opinion, come in three sizes. One is those monster sizes that have gotten away from you. These I feed to my chickens. I don't usually bother with them. They start to get kind of seedy and overgrown, and really would rather not use them. The next kind are these medium-sized ones, and I think these are just fine if you want to make a cake or a quick bread. You know, zucchini bread when you're grating it up, or cake when you're grating it up, this size is really perfectly fine. Today I went out to pick zucchini, and what did I end up with? One giant one that got away with from me and a couple medium size. Now the smaller, tinier ones, those are the ones that I think are perfect for making zucchini chips. I think of a recipe out there. Tinier ones, those are the ones that I think are perfect for making zucchini chips. I think of a recipe out there that I'll post the link to in the description below. If you're interested in that, that has a little Parmesan cheese and breadcrumbs on it. I think they're the better small ones if you want to make like a vegetable stir fry or make some Chinese and so forth. So save your little ones to eat the zucchini as a vegetable, grate your medium-sized ones, and these throw away to the chickens or your compost pile if you don't have chickens. All right, so we're going to do this recipe in three separate parts here today. The first part will be getting our zucchini ready using our food processor. The second part will be getting the cake ready, and while the cake bakes, we can get our glaze ready to melt, and we will drizzle that on top. So let's focus first on the zucchini. I'm going to be using my food processor. I have two very favorite like countertop appliances, and one is my Cuisinart food processor, and the other is my KitchenAid mixer that we'll use for the next part. Today we will be using our grating blade. I tell you, I have had this, I bet I've had my not my mixer, but my food processor for probably 15 years, and the motor in this thing just keeps running, and the blades just keep sharp all the time. So we'll put that blade in there, and then we're gonna cut the ends off. Just one of these zucchini will be plenty. In fact, we'll probably have way more than 2 cups out of this. So I just cut them down into sizes that will fit into the top of my food processor. Notice I am not removing the skins, the darker green. I kind of like the little flecks of green in the things that I make. This one's got a little bad spot. I will cut that part of the skin off. But otherwise, I just use them just like they are and let all of it get grated. If you don't want that, it would be as simple as grabbing your vegetable peeler and removing it. So time to grate. Just put all these pieces in. I can usually only fit about 2 of those at a time. All 3 of those in for this last go around on the grating of our zucchini. Now zucchini is one of those vegetables you really don't need to buy it. I bet you can find somebody with a garden who has some they'd be happy to give away. Now as you can see, we have way more than 2 cups. So what I usually do is measure out what I need for my cake, and then the rest of it I put into the freezer. I don't blanch it or do anything to it. I just put it into, you could use Ziploc bags, or I have a food sealer where I can get the air out a little bit better. And then I can make a chocolate cake or some zucchini bread in the winter time. All right, we're gonna switch to part 2, making the cake. I mentioned a minute ago that maybe you have a lot of zucchini in your garden, but maybe you have a lot of cucumbers too. This is a time of year where those seem to just keep producing, and I'm really kind of done making pickles, and I can only keep up with so many on salads and so forth. So if you're looking for a way to use up some cucumbers, I'll post my cucumber salad recipe in the description below as well. Well, today's cake uses quite a variety of ingredients, so I think we're going to take a closer look at everything you need to make this chocolate zucchini cake. Here are all the ingredients needed for the cake portion of our triple chocolate zucchini cake. We'll get to the glaze in a little bit. We are going to use a 1/2 cup of margarine that has been softened and a 1/2 cup of oil. I have vegetable oil. We'll use 1 3/4 cup white granulated sugar and a 1/4 cup cocoa powder, 2 eggs, a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of vanilla, 1/2 cup of sour milk. Well, when I saw this recipe called for sour milk, I always think, who keeps sour milk around? So I just squirt a little bit of lemon juice in it and figure I get the sour that way. We'll also use a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, cinnamon, and baking soda. We have 2 1/2 cups of flour, 1/2 cup chocolate chips, and again, as I've mentioned in other videos, I really like those mini chocolate chips because you just get a little more of that in every bite. Followed by our 2 cups of grated zucchini. And isn't it pretty with that dark green still left on and not peeled off? I just preheated my oven to 325 degrees. With most cake recipes, if you get your oven preheated before you start mixing, it's usually up to the proper temperature as you're pouring your cake into the pan. In our KitchenAid mixer today, we're going to be using our paddle attachment, and we're going to put that on there first, and we're going to cream our oil and our softened margarine. You could use butter if you prefer. I kind of go back and forth between the two things. In a lot of my cakes like this, I think the margarine is just fine. And my oil goes in, along with the 1 3/4 cup sugar. It's 2 1/2 cups of flour and 1 3/4 cup of white granulated sugar. I'll raise that up and do a little mixing. You want to beat that pretty good. Creaming it together, you really want to get those sugar and butter combo going and kind of get that sugar to start breaking down. I'm going to turn it up a little. And next into this mixture goes our eggs. This is a conventional mixing order. So I am going to crack my eggs into a bowl. I always like to be sure I'm avoiding getting any shell or anything I don't want into my cake. We'll mix that one and then add the other one. Now that those are well mixed, we'll add in our 1/4 cup of cocoa powder, and that's an unsweetened chocolate, along with a teaspoon of vanilla. And we'll mix again. This time I'm going to wipe the sides down a little bit with my spatula. Some of that chocolate is kind of up on the side. Stirring every once in a while to be sure nothing's getting left out of the main mixture there is always a good idea. Give it a little more mixing there. This recipe calls for adding our wet ingredients before our dry ingredients. So we are to the milk, and again, it called for sour milk, so I don't even really measure too much. I know maybe I better, I'd hate to mess it up on a video. So I'm gonna put like just a 1/2 teaspoon to a teaspoon of lemon juice in there. That was about a 1/2. Just enough to give it a little sour taste. And again, mix. Mix carefully with this because you've got a lot of liquid right now. We'll take a look at that. At this point, as you can see, the batter is very runny, but that will change as we add our dry ingredients. Our first dry ingredient is a teaspoon of salt, followed by 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, Those will be the two ingredients that help make this rise. And then half a teaspoon of cinnamon. I have already measured out my 2.5 cups of flour, so I'm going to put maybe half of that in and then kind of mix just to be sure I don't get a cloud of white dust. All right, we're ready to finish the dry ingredients there. Once you get it partially mixed, you can turn it up a little bit. And again, good idea to scrape the sides of your mixing bowl. We have our chocolate chips and our zucchini left. I'm gonna go ahead and do my zucchini next, and I usually put in a good heaping cup of zucchini. Now the thing about this recipe, the zucchini will keep this cake so moist and delicious. I mean, you could leave this on a counter. I think you could leave it uncovered, and this would stay moist for days. Where so many cakes dry out, especially like once they're cut, the open edges just turn dry and just aren't quite as pleasant to eat. But the zucchini in this, there's so much water in a zucchini, as with most fruits, that it just is perfect for getting a cake that is constantly moist. And then I'm just gonna throw in those chocolate chips and give them a good stir. And now everything is in our chocolate cake mix. Our spatula to clean off our paddle beater here. All right, we're ready for our cake pan. We're going to grease and flour our 9x13 cake pan. So a little cooking spray across the bottom, and then I am going to shake a little bit of flour in and just kind of tip it around until all of the bottom of the cake pan has flour dusting on it. Then we will add our cake mix to the bottom, right onto that floury surface. And we're ready to bake this at 325 degrees, and it will take 40 to 45 minutes to finish. We will be testing its doneness by putting a toothpick in and making sure that when that is pulled out, that there is no doughy look to it and that it appears to be cooked through in the middle. So there is our chocolate cake before we cook it. While it cooks, we'll work on ingredients for the chocolate glaze. The cake has been in the oven for 40 minutes. Let's see if our toothpick comes out clean in the center of the cake. Oh, that looks great. We got a few crumbs of cake, but we do not have that liquidy batter. It's time to remove the cake from the oven. We'll let it cool slightly before we add the glaze. For our glaze, we need 2 tablespoons of each of these 3 ingredients. We will be using 2 tablespoons of corn syrup, 2 tablespoons of butter, and I do usually use butter for my glaze, and 2.5 squares of unsweetened chocolate, which comes in a big bar like this, and a regular table knife or even a sharp one will easily snap those apart. We'll melt in the microwave at 30-second increments, stirring in between because it's very easy to burn butter and chocolate. If you're unfamiliar with unsweetened chocolate, just taste it when you buy it, but it's basically more like a dark chocolate than anything else, but even a dark chocolate has just a little bit more sweetness than this unsweetened chocolate. When they say unsweetened, they really do mean unsweetened, which is why I think The corn syrup is kind of a necessity in it because that adds our sweetness. So in we go, 2 tablespoons of each of our ingredients. Perfect. Off to the microwave to melt this. After 30 seconds, this has begun to melt. We're probably going to need another 30 seconds to get all that hard, unsweetened chocolate to finish melting. That's looking pretty good. Our butter is all melted, and that little bit of chocolate that's slightly solid, I can kind of just work it in with my wooden spoon rather than continuing to heat it in the microwave. Time to drizzle it on the cake. Well, the glaze is ready to drizzle on this semi-cooled chocolate cake that has 3 kinds of chocolate. We have that semi-sweet chocolate chips in there, we have the cocoa powder in there, and now we use some unsweetened chocolate mixed with that corn syrup though to give it a sweetness. One other thing you could do with this cake is to put some nuts in. Pecans and walnuts are my favorite 2 choices, so this would easily be a cake that you could add some nuts to. All right, I think it's time to give this cake a cut and a taste. I'm not a huge frosting person, so I really enjoy just having this nice simple glaze on the top. Oh, just look at this cake. It's just so moist. You can just tell when you put your fork into it. It's just got a delicate, moist texture. And you know, it's really all due to that zucchini, and there's even a little speckle of green. You probably have a hard time seeing that in the video. Makes it look a little pretty, along with the drizzle of chocolate on the top. And you know, for me, it's just the right balance of chocolate. It's not so rich and gooey and heavy, but there's just enough chocolate there to delight all you chocolate lovers as well. So if you like this and any of my recipes, be sure to subscribe to Time to Cook with Susan Beck and try triple chocolate zucchini cake.